All right. I
All
think
right.
we're live.
I think we're live. Before we get started, I gotta apologize to all of our one listeners for being actually offline in Washington last week. I was warned that there wasn't signal, and I thought, nah, this will be fine. And there was like no signal, like
Wow.
like none at all. But yeah, I learned a lesson. It was actually before we get into it, it was actually really cool to be offline, and then I remembered, like, yes, I'm supposed to be doing a podcast. So I hung out by the Skagit River, which is actually super cool in Washington, not too far from where Matt is, but unfortunately completely offline. But it was
Mm.
was really, we were glamping, which I would recommend to
Hmm.
anybody. But also as a tech fiend
Where'd you
like
go?
me, we went to, oh shoot, I've already, Mazama, I believe is the name of the place. I already forgot it, but Mazama is specifically where we went, and it was
Okay.
it's like, I think it's called the shoulder season. So like before the summer season starts, there was
Mm.
no one around. We were in a cabin, but like of all the cabins, there were like maybe two occupied.
Yeah.
And there was just no cell at all, which is like kind of cool, but also you
Yeah.
forget, like, oh right, my GPS will work, but the map will not.
Right.
Just
Right.
like, oh yeah, you gotta like like preloading a map. I haven't done that in forever.
Yeah.
Because you get GPS signal, but of course it can go through it. And I had a
Right.
US cell plan. I thought it was fair, but no.
Mm.
It was like less than 1 bar, whatever that is. You know, when your
Wow.
phone goes to SOS mode, it was like,
Yeah.
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 It was, again, actually kind of awesome to be able to
Yeah.
like read a real book,
Mm-hmm.
play
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo Switch offline, like, those things, or
Mm-hmm.
like maybe talk to your spouse. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Be present for a little bit. It was actually like a little bit therapeutic, I guess, after spending, I don't know, 3 years cooped up inside, kind of like
Yeah.
consuming all of YouTube and Netflix as fast as possible. It
Mm-hmm.
was cool to just like unplug and relax.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, Washington is amazing. I've probably said on this podcast before, but like in the US, you can drive straight up to a view and see like amazing mountains. Like it feels like the infrastructure, they paved all the way at the top of the mountain, so you can drive right to the top and look down at the water. It is phenomenal.
Right.
So Diablo Lake, for example, was one of those, which was
Mm.
astounding. If you haven't seen it, it
Yeah.
just blew my mind. Yeah, it
Wow.
was it was really really nice.
Well, in Washington, we had a bit of a blow for that kind of, one really popular place to go to, you can't go to anymore.
Hmm.
And that's Hurricane Ridge in the Olympic Mountains.
Okay.
Um, Amazing. You go to Port Angeles and then you basically go straight up the mountain.
Right.
And Amazing area. I've gone hiking there a bunch of times, and you have this view from up there. You look over to Victoria, you look over to into the Olympics, and it's gorgeous. But 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were doing renovations in the lodge, and it burned down.
Oh no.
And at least for now, still they've got the whole, you can't go up the mountain
It's just all
because
boarded off. Okay.
that's the only big parking area, and they want to make sure they can still like investigate what happened.
Right.
I don't know how long that lasts, but
Right.
I mean it's a big. I mean it was absolutely nothing fancy. It was kind of a horrible air building,
Right.
and so it being gone, not a big loss because it kind of sucked, but the parking lot being closed is awful.
I don't mean to like set expectations, but in Canada, so like that lodge would be the reward after like a 3 hour hike that may
Mm-hmm.
have a porta potty that hasn't been like touched in years,
Yeah,
full of graffiti, and there's this
yeah.
paper everywhere. It's just like you're lucky if it's got toilet paper kind of thing. Like it's pretty uncommon. In the US, like even the porta potties have nice toilets, like stainless steel
Mm.
toilets. It's amazing. Like that we saw the person restocking the one at Diablo Lake, for example, had like this pile of toilet paper that they were dropping off on Monday morning. It was just like it's a really big difference in it's not that
Yeah,
we don't care about our parks, it's just that we just don't have the money to support them. And we have a lot of them, like it admittedly. But yeah, even just that drive, like that's always a hike. There's generally like a good hour, if not like 2 or 3 hour hike to get into anything that
yeah,
looks really nice. Anything that's got like a half hour even hike is going to be packed. The parking lot will be
yeah.
full. There's no way to get in. Weekend, weekday, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I just love it. I hate to be like that. Maybe it's like patriotism or something, but I feel like I should like Canadian parks more, and I do. It's
Yeah.
just when I go to the US, it's so much more enjoyable, so much easier to just go on a family hike.
Yeah. Oh, yes. National parks in the U.S. Unfortunately, there are a few things that are going against the national parks. First off, there's the collecting fees
I'm okay with
for.
that.
No. I'm okay with collecting fees,
Okay.
but it was the whole collecting fees was outsourced to a company, one of the major like banks in New York, and basically they are collecting a lot of fees, but not passing it back to the national parks, and so they're keeping it for themselves. And apparently, this was part of the deal, and it was known. And then the vendor that does all the lodges is, I can't remember. Aramark, I think, is the name of the company.
Okay, I'm
They're
familiar with them.
awful,
Yeah, my uncle used to work.
awful. You know, anything they can do to make, to
Right.
get the most money for
Extract
the least service,
Yeah,
they will do. And I mean, they've taken some really great lodges and just made them not so great.
that's unfortunate.
Oh well.
That's rough. But while I was there without internet, apparently
Hmm.
there was this company you might be familiar with that had some announcements or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Glasses?
Oh God, what was it? Yeah, little
My
company.
tongue. It's named after some fruit. I don't know.
Fruit, orange. Yeah,
Orange,
the
yes, Orange Mobile.
Orange Mobile, yes. Or pineapple. Isn't there like a raspberry pie?
Yeah,
That
there's
is,
like a hack
or
and
maybe it
tool,
was
right? The
raspberry.
pineapple.
Yeah,
Raspberry.
yeah.
So honestly,
Yeah.
I didn't see a lot of news. I will say that I watched more reaction videos.
Hmm.
Um, and I held off because I knew you might want to talk about this on
Hmm.
watching the iJustine ones, because she's honestly my favorite, because she's
Yeah.
unapologetically just very
Yep.
positive about Apple stuff, as I
Yep.
feel I kind of as well as a bit of a fan. So I did not watch any of her stuff, but I did watch the Marquez Brownlee
Hmm.
kind of excerpt from his podcast where they talk
Right.
about the new headset, some of the weird things
Hmm.
about testing
The
it, because they only got 3 minutes.
waveform, is it? Or is that
Yeah,
what the
I think it
podcast
might
name?
be.
Waveform? Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it on a YouTube video, but yeah,
Yeah.
I believe you're right. I find he's generally pretty balanced in his
Yeah.
review of upcoming tech, which is
Yeah.
good, because like a lot of the people I like are very much biased. So Linus Tech
Hmm.
Tips, for example, is generally
Yeah.
anti-Apple, which is fine.
Yep.
And iJustine, of course, the eyes in the name is generally
Right.
positive. So those are the two that I've so far avoided, but I tried to
Yeah.
stay a little bit neutral. But yes, there's a headset. I think there was a lot of news though,
Yeah.
and some of the news that I was pretty interested in didn't get a lot of fanfare. Like I'm super interested in Mac Pros, and then
In
once I
what?
saw it in
Oh,
the
Mac Pro.
Mac Pro,
Yeah.
as someone who's owned a few of them and really
Hmm.
like that platform, I gotta admit I'm just not excited. This Studio looks way more interesting to me than the
Oh
Mac
yeah.
Pro. 128 gigabytes of RAM. I get it. It's on board.
192 on the
100
Studio.
Oh, is it on one night? It's even better. But like
Yeah.
128 is generally what I go for now.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people out there are like, why would you need this? I'm still stuck on VMs. I'm running a ton of
Yeah.
Docker containers, and my Lightroom catalog's massive. I never close any tabs,
Yeah.
let alone applications. So like for me, I'm a messy desk worker in the virtual environment, and because of
Mhm.
that, it means memory consumption. And for
Yeah.
me, like the thing that gives you the more memory, the better. I think I've got 32
Right.
gigabytes in the MacBook Pro that I'm using now, the M2
Yep.
version. But yeah, I love being able to have more memory. And though the
Mhm.
Mac Pro has it, the size doesn't make sense unless you've got a bunch of PCIe add-in cards. And the
Mhm.
Studio has 10 gig, and it's kind of difficult for me to argue against like adding storage and stuff like that when they've got 4 Thunderbolt ports and I've already got
Right.
a NAS. It becomes one
Yeah.
of those things where I become more and more interested in the smaller
Yeah.
platforms. So I was really interested to see the new. It's the Max, I believe, right? Or is it the Ultra?
The
Ultra Studio.
Ultra. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is two of the other big chips to combine.
Two of the ones that are already two combined.
Yeah.
If I understood it properly.
And from some of the reviews I've seen where they are looking at, how how powerful is this thing? And it
Right.
is like for multi-core processing, it is about double what the single. I mean, which is amazing. How?
Which is already amazing.
I mean, I would expect, two of them combined, so maybe 50% better or 75% better, but it's like 99.99999% better.
And some of these apps, again, aren't optimized properly for this platform.
Yeah.
So Premiere is one of the ones that people were testing,
Yeah.
and it's still quite a bit faster, which
Yeah.
is kind of amazing because if I understand properly, they're running like just in time. It's not transcompilation, but it's something like that where they're like making it run on a different platform just in time. So as the instruction set is being called, they're redirecting it on the ARM chip,
Right.
and it's still faster than Intel,
Yeah.
which is just amazing to me. But not
It's
just
incredible,
faster,
yeah.
but also like it's ramping up as they add more cores to it, which
Yeah.
is it's just
Yeah, one of the
phenomenal.
reviews I saw talked about using Premiere, and it was a for the one particular outputting one particular video took like 5 minutes on even on the M2 M2 Max or something,
Right.
and it was down to like 2 minutes on the Ultra. Like, wow.
It's incredible. Some of that's IO, like those
Yeah.
drives that they're using the NVMe
Yeah.
on boards. They're quite fast for sure.
Yeah.
I think they're version 4 PCIe on essentially on die, which is neat because there's
Mhm.
no. I don't think there's a North Bridge basically when it comes to ARM. Like it's all on die, which Intel has done already. But that connection from CPU to storage is right there, and the memory is right alongside it.
Yeah.
It's kind of incredible. So transferring between cache to your was it L4 cache, I guess at that point in time, your memory to the hard disk, which is NVMe
Mhm.
now, is instantaneous. Like that for video, I guess, is like a really
Yeah.
big win. I don't do a lot of video, but when I do, I just it takes half an hour to do anything. And
Yeah.
it's incredibly annoying. You go away, like I might have a couple rounds of Street Fighter or something like that and come back. And
Right.
it's incredibly frustrating, especially if you mess it up, which 9 times out of 10 I've messed up the exports somehow. I
Yeah.
put it out in ProRes instead of QuickTime or some
Right.
other just
Yeah.
noob mistake because I'm still not that great at video. But those decreases in speed are massive because it's like
Yeah.
that it's like that developer kind of virtuous cycle where you want that quick feedback loop, and the faster you can make that loop go, the better it is for your actual working with the video.
Right.
I'm on board. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm tempted by the Studio. I mean, I'm still on the M1 Max, whatever the fastest M1 is, with 64 gigs RAM and 4 terabyte internal on the MacBook Pro.
Oh, nice.
And I can't stand when some of these reviewers or buyer's guides suggest getting the smallest drive you can and just relying on external storage. Like,
does not make any sense.
Or the smallest, getting 8 gig of RAM. I mean, most people aren't going to. Yeah, I'm sure they probably will.
Yeah, Safari does a pretty good job of keeping its memory in check, but honestly, you're probably not using Safari as your primary browser.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Even though like you may be anti-Google or anti-Edge or whatever, you're probably using something that could benefit from some more memory. It's tough. That being said, is what you currently have not meeting your current needs? Because that's kind of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I easily get to a point where I mean, even I watched the activity on the CPU cores, and I mean, I guess the exporting from Final Cut, it's not really using the cores, the CPU, it's using the GPU,
Right.
and I'm not really seeing. I guess I don't have a good meter that shows me how active is the GPU.
Oh,
and so I probably need to.
Something for you, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if I can recommend this honestly, but iStat menus is what I've paid for.
Yeah, I'm not.
And I've just had it for years.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought, but I'm not seeing the GPU on there.
It's under CPU, so if you click on CPU, will come in. Now that I've said this, that is a very good point. I just looked at it. Yeah, GPU is not here.
Yeah.
My apologies.
And I see it on in the preferences. It lists GPU as
It,
it should be available, but then it
right.
doesn't actually. It's not one of the little widgets you can add.
Yeah, and I'm
So
looking under activity monitor, and there's no
yeah,
GPU here either. So exercise for the
yeah,
readers, I suppose. How do we
yeah,
monitor GPUs now? But it's
yeah.
it's a good question. If you've given like 9 cores to GPUs,
Right,
then what the
right.
heck's going on with
And so I mean,
this
I'm seeing.
ROI?
I was exporting something that, and it was using I had a few different, some color correction as well as um Keeper. Do you know Keeper?
I don't.
Are you using Final Cut or are
I'm
you
not.
using Premiere? Okay.
Uh, Generally, I'm using Resolve actually, of all
Okay.
things.
Okay. So Keeper is a keying thing that will just, it automatically does people. And so there's no configuration you need to do. It just keys out people, or keys it so that you just have the person, which is great. I mean, it's as soon as you want to be a little bit more, have a little bit more knobs, there's not really many knobs to turn, but it does that, and it does it really well, and it's super fast. And but using that and a few other things, and exporting this video took a while. I mean, it took for a 6-minute video, it took, I don't know, 6 minutes or something, which was a crazy long time for Final Cut normally. And so sometimes I wish that were a little faster. Do I wish it was? Do I want to pay the extra few grand to get it faster? Maybe not.
Maybe not. Is this Keeper Keyper? Just
Yeah,
for the show notes. Okay,
yeah,
awesome. So I looked it up. Actually, this looks very handy for me.
yeah.
Outside of work, or maybe inside of work. A lot of what I want to do is like highlight a person and
Hmm.
maybe just you bump up the exposure
Yeah.
on the person itself. Just that's it kind of thing.
I
It's really
often
cool.
like it to have like the kind of the titles that explain what I'm doing just behind my head.
Oh yes.
So that
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
moving your head and there's the titles back there.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Like the
Which
Vogue
is,
effect. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah.
So,
So yeah, I mean, I guess I
as
always wish it
someone
was faster.
as someone arguing about the few grand that they can spend. So my next question here about this amazing headset, which we've yet to talk about, is like what the
Yeah.
dev kit could possibly cost, and how do I get in there? Because I have an amazing app idea that I've not told anyone but you on this podcast. But if the
Hmm.
action here, if the action is this
Hmm.
to do things in the headset, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Kids in the Hall, but what I really want is an app that does this, where I can smush heads. So if I'm able to see, if I'm able to see what the goggles see as well as do this as an action, I have an app idea. But I don't have the funding to make this the head smushing
Mm.
app. But
Mm.
I really like the fact, and this is maybe getting into the weeds too quickly, but I really like the fact they've made a lot of the cameras outside of the
Yeah.
headset really high def and able
Yeah.
to track a motion as simple as that to do your
Yeah.
click. I think it's pretty cool. There's some accessibility concerns I already have, having dealt with
Hmm.
people who have like motor issues
Sure.
and things like that. So like I do think that needs to be addressed. However, I feel like their approach is really smart. Instead of having the joystick, which is even
Hmm.
harder to deal with when it comes to
Hmm.
accessibility. That being said, I mean you can move it, of course, with the
Right.
motor, and you can click the button, of course, with a
Yeah.
different motor or something. But being able to make it a human gesture that you
Right.
can maybe replicate with, let's say, a fake hand or something like that is
Hmm.
pretty sweet. I think
Yeah.
it's a really good idea.
Yeah. In fact, it was the Marquez Brownlee a review of it where he said, sometimes he didn't even notice that he was
Right.
doing that, and all of a sudden it clicked, and it's like
Yes.
it was. In fact, the of all I've seen a bunch of reviews of
Oh, have
this
you?
thing,
Okay, I was trying not to spoil my
and
opinion. Okay.
well, every review that I've seen, you can tell. Um, Everybody who has been negative about it
Right.
has only seen the keynote.
Oh, okay. I haven't actually tried it.
Everyone who has actually was invited to actually try it out and play around with it, every single one of those is like, this is amazing.
Yeah, and we're talking about
Expensive,
accessibility a little bit. Expensive
but
for
amazing.
sure.
Yeah.
Eye tracking, straight up, eye tracking is one of those things that, like, I think Minolta started with first, and then Canon was it the EOS 5
Hmm.
back in the day that did eye tracking. This is something that we've tried to do for years, and we were on the cusp of getting right for a long time. We're talking like early 90s. Like it's been
Hmm.
around for a while.
Yeah.
Being able to tell where the eye is pointed, it is
Yeah.
definitely one of those things where there are people who all they in terms of their communication with the world, their
Hmm.
technique is eye movement. This could
Right.
be revolutionary,
Yeah.
honestly. It's
Yeah.
I hate to like get excited about it, but like
Yeah.
honestly, this is pretty next level. Being able to
Yeah.
actually track with some fidelity your eye and allow you to unlock your
Hmm.
device with the pattern of your iris is
Hmm.
pretty next level. And I think a
Right.
lot of people are downplaying this when they saw in the
Yeah.
release notes, but even just seeing the release notes and seeing that to me was an aha moment. And it's
Hmm.
not that I don't think Canon and Minolta did it well. It's just that sometimes when Apple comes along and does something a little bit later than other people,
Yeah.
they
Oh yeah.
tend to get it right. Just
Yeah.
historically, they may take a while to get there, but they
Yeah.
tend to get it right. And I really have a lot of high hopes in terms of maybe let's say they don't get it right, but setting the bar and the expectation for other people to get this type of technology right, which is something that we all have, and generally will have those muscle movements in terms of like making something move and be able to like blink to click is
Hmm.
pretty next level. So
Yeah.
unlock, move, and click.
Yep.
That's a lot of functionality right there, just in your eyes.
Yeah.
Um, there's one
Yeah.
piece of tech there that like I don't know. What do you think about the transparent mode though to see your eyes?
Oh, I think that's great.
Okay.
I mean, there are some people who are like, "Oh, is this weird?" I mean, that, and then the FaceTime,
Yes.
where where they see all of
I
you.
I am not
That
sold on the FaceTime.
uh,
Put my foot down. I'm
I
not
think
here
that's
for
super
Mark
cool.
Zuckerberg's metaverse. I'm
Yeah, I
so
think that's
sorry.
super cool. I think, I mean, regarding this not being new technology but more refined. I mean, there's nothing that Apple has ever come out with that is revolutionary, that never happened before. That everything they do has already
Experimental?
existed before, and they've just taken this idea that somebody else had, that somebody else came up with, and they've just made it better. I can't think of anything that Apple came out with first.
I can think of a couple.
What?
The trash can Mac, just in the Mac Pro area. The trash can Mac, the cheese grater, the perforated hole designs, stainless steel computers,
Mm,
those kind of things are
yeah,
specific to Apple. Whether or
I
not
mean,
they went anywhere is a whole other
I,
argument.
I mean, a specific design of it, okay,
I guess
but
that's
I
unfair.
mean
Yeah, in terms of technology. Yeah.
the technologies. I mean, any technology. I mean, even
Lightning
the
cables?
Apple Store. The one of the things that has set them apart is the Apple Store,
Right.
and Microsoft had the Microsoft Store, the physical locations, a decade before,
That's true.
and Sony had it as well. I mean,
Sony had it for
often,
years. Yeah.
yeah, um, but Apple just did it better. There's multi-touch on the iPhone, which was like a amazing feature. Microsoft had it first, but Apple just made it better.
Haptic, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, haptic on like on keyboards and on trackpads
Oh,
were
there was like that
on some
Genesis gaming
earlier.
device too. Yeah, good point.
All these things existed. It was just better on Apple. Um, but I mean, some people would argue whether the whole OS look and feel is it a Windows thing or
Xerox Park. Yeah.
or Park? Yeah,
Yeah.
they just made it better.
The other thing that I thought was really cool about this device that I think some people who again haven't like watched all the reviews is that it's standalone. The
Hmm.
battery life is a problem because of that, but the
2
fact that
hours.
it is a computer is
Yeah,
pretty incredible.
yeah,
And if you want to plug it in, I guess you could run it indefinitely, but
yeah,
2 hours does sound a little bit suspect to me as
yeah,
like as a movie watching device, that's a little bit
yeah.
like if I'm on a plane, maybe I'm plugging it into the back of the seat,
Hmm.
possibly. But yeah, 2 hours doesn't sound like a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's an external battery and not something that
Right.
is built in.
It
So
would be heavier, yeah.
yeah, I mean that is the big negative that a lot of people have said is like it, it is heavy.
Oh,
It
it is?
is.
Okay.
It
Even without the
really
battery.
weighs down your head. I mean, it's.
Okay.
I think I heard one person was like, it will basically, unless you're standing straight, your head's gonna flop over. because it's kind of top.
Well, it's
It's
got three
heavy.
screens, right? Like I
Yeah.
think most people will gloss over the fact that
And
eye thing.
it's a metal and glass.
Yeah, that eye thing is not that. Those aren't
Yeah.
your eyes that you're seeing. Those are two
No.
cameras pointed at your eyes displayed
Yeah.
on one screen that's external, and you're
Yeah.
looking at two internal screens, and they're all high res, which is like
Yeah.
it's sandwiching
Better than
those screens.
4K.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the glass, higher than 4K, and I
Yeah.
think it's over 120 hertz refresh rate.
Yeah.
That's a lot of processing power. Two processors, there's an R chip and an M chip. Like I
Yeah.
get it. There's a lot going on, and it's
Yeah.
also first generation. But the question is, Matt,
Right.
would you buy one?
It depends. It depends on. I think it depends.
Okay.
I think it depends on Datadog.
All right. All right.
Well,
We can
it
monitor
depends
mobile apps.
on. It depends on where the stock price is
I see what
and
you're saying.
how many shares I need to sell to buy it.
I see you saying. Did you know,
So,
Matt, that we have an event coming up called Dash where we announce a bunch of things, and sometimes
did you know that all changes in the Datadog stock price has had absolutely nothing to do with any announcements on the part of Datadog?
the stock market is not rational.
Those two things do not. The price and what amazing things Datadog is doing, completely unrelated.
They seem to be unrelated. Yes.
In fact, the last earnings call was positive, and it was very unusual in that it resulted
Right.
in a positive price increase for the stock. Every other positive call has resulted in dropping the price.
It is difficult. Like once you see how the sausage is made in terms of like your company and how well they're doing versus
Oh,
like
God,
what
yeah.
the stock market thinks about it. And I'm sure you
Yeah.
saw this at Microsoft as well, because
Yeah.
Microsoft had some banner years while you were there,
Right.
but also the stock didn't always, day to day at least, the stock didn't always respond in the
Yeah.
same way. It also feels like people get news later, and then there's like
Yeah.
sort of like title kind of things. Like it's stock
Right.
market strange. And I say this like full disclosure: don't invest based on anything I've said.
Yeah.
I've worked for a mutual fund. I'm pretty familiar
Right.
with the stock market. It's irrational.
Yeah.
There's also like microtransactions and stuff like that are going on behind the scenes and algorithmic trading. It's very hard to predict the market, unfortunately. But yes, we do have some announcements coming up. But I don't know. So I guess if I were to ask myself this question, I might buy one like right away and start using it.
Yeah.
As somebody who's tried like a few headsets, and like the Samsung one's the one that I used the most, and I really there were some parts of VR or whatever you're gonna call it, XR or AR, that I really thought were groundbreaking and changing to me. And one of those was like laying on my back computing. It's like
Right. Yeah.
actually awesome to be able to I'm not going to say like when you have a headache or something like that, but maybe if you get a flu or something like that and you're bedridden, having a headset is it's worth the money. So the first flu I get, I can totally see myself like man sick going out and grabbing one of these headsets just so I can get something done, because I always want to be productive. I don't know if it's like puritanical or whatever, but I want to be doing something even when I'm sick.
Right.
And I can see myself gravitating towards something like this as opposed to like buying a new PS5 video game or something like that just to get stuff done. That'll be me. At like a moment of weakness in a year once it's released, the first flu I get or the first sickness I get, I'm going to reach out and grab one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the scenario that they talked about, which I totally want for, I want to have the experience where I can get something done on a plane, and because I cannot open this. I mean, I'm 6'4", which means I don't fit in a lot of. I mean, I fit. I mean, I wedge myself in, but I'm not. I'm not, and I don't know. I mean, for you might think I'm incredibly svelte, but I'm a little bit on the wider side. And
just
so
walking down the street with you though, like 6'4", like when you say it as a number, like I'm 5'7", 5'8" kind of thing. It's a big difference, and I fit comfortably in a plane, but I'm kind of at the limit, and I'm pretty short.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest. Like 5'7", 5'8" is not very tall. 6'4" looks completely just in terms of like leg room and knee space alone, let alone like a tray with a computer on it and trying to get stuff done with like your arms kind of like this.
Yeah.
Like there's just no way. So I totally get it.
I can never, because my legs are close enough to the seat in front,
Right.
even if there's nothing under the seat in front of me, I can't get my legs under there because
Right.
there's
Yeah.
just no way for the legs
It's
to
just
bend that way. The
physically
knees
impossible.
the knees are too high up.
Yeah.
And so it means I can't really open up the laptop. I have no problem with the person in front leaning back. I mean, ideally they don't, but I'm not gonna. That's their space. They should be able to lean
Unfortunately,
back.
yeah.
But if I can have the screen on my head and I am typing on something, that's amazing. That is the amazing use case that I dream of, and I know somebody's not watching my screen, but of course there's privacy screens for that. But
Yeah, so apparently there's ways of like masking it as well, because like there's some sort of a little bit of strangeness in terms of like seeing your eye. I guess the digital crown, you can sort of change the amount that you see versus the amount that's like real life or whatever, like the blend basically, how
right,
much of the camera you see in.
right,
The biggest thing that a lot of people are talking about is not wanting to look like an idiot with this device on. And I don't know about you, but when I'm on a plane, I could give no shits.
yeah,
I don't mean
yeah,
to swear in the podcast, but like I really just don't care how much of an
yeah,
idiot I look like as long as I'm comfy for
yeah,
like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 hours.
right,
Don't
right,
care.
yeah,
I really just don't care. Are you
yeah,
the same way? Like maybe walking around the street, I get it.
yeah. I mean, I'm like I wear an eye mask a lot, and that looks like you look stupid, but
Who
I'm
cares?
fine with that.
Who cares? Get some rest.
There are some really stupid looking pillows that you can get.
Yeah.
Oh, or just the fact that people bring a pillow, like a full blown pillow on the plane. That
Yeah.
looks ridiculous.
And I've recently learned that they're
Be
wearing them
comfortable.
backwards most of the time because apparently they're
Yeah.
supposed to be in the front as opposed to the back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know. I don't use those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm happy to hear you with me because
yeah,
I feel like the audience for the first adopters, I feel like it
yeah.
is the same. Like the Google or like glass holes or whatever, probably felt the same way. They just didn't
Mhm.
care what they honestly
Yeah.
look like, and they tried to make it happen in
Yeah.
fashion and stuff like that. Didn't work out,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
I don't know what will
every
happen.
other VR headset I've never been interested in.
Right.
They never come across as being something that's interesting at all. Um, I've used. I mean, I haven't really used all that many of them. I've used the the PlayStation one.
PSVR, yeah.
And I actually used I used that because at the Boston Datadog office they had it hooked up to the same TV that was the several of the offices have kind of this the
Oh, like the
fishbowl or
portal.
whatever
Yep.
where the portal to the Paris and the New York and the Boston office, and so I was standing in front of the screen thinking I was just on that screen, and New
You
York
broadcast
and
to every
Paris
office.
New York and Paris were like, Matt, we can see you. And I'm like,
I'm in
looking at
VR.
dinosaurs running after me or something. So I've had that. And then the other one that I've used, and I used a lot, was a company called, I think it was Forte. And they had the VFX1. So this was in late 90s. And it was a full VR headset with gyroscopes and all, and it was heavy, and it had a wire that came out that hooked up to a super beefy PC.
Right.
And the resolution of the screens, the two screens were 320 by 200.
Ooh.
And it was like magic. I mean, you were in this. I mean, we were playing Descent, and which was this amazing game in 3D space.
That actually sounds like that low res tech might work perfectly for Descent.
It was amazing. And various Quakes, and so we played all of those on that game, on that headset, and that was a work thing. I couldn't afford it myself.
Try the PSVR actually. Like, that's a good point because I honestly haven't gamed that much aside from the Samsung stuff I was playing with. But you mentioned something there just in passing in terms of the res being very small, and that's one of the things that I noticed as well. That the Samsung one, I think it was a 4K screen, but chopped in two. I think you ended up getting like 1440p per eye.
Mm-hmm.
And it had some screen door effects, so that's like lines between
Mm.
the screen and stuff. I still thought it was compelling, and I think the reason I liked it was different than everybody else. What I really liked was being able to take a panorama picture and sort of live in the picture
Mm-hmm.
as a therapeutic device. Which
Yeah.
I get it. Like a lot of people are
Yeah.
kind of they're gonna say this is like hippy dippy and stuff like that. But being able to be inside of a photo I've taken on my like
Yeah.
Nikon camera that's like
Yeah.
8K resolution basically was phenomenal to me. Just being able to
Yeah.
rotate around and looking at details, I thought was a really cool way to view artwork, and to have my own
Yeah.
sort of soundtrack to this was
Yeah.
fantastic. Also, being able to get on one of those stupid roller coaster kind of video rides was actually like I felt like throwing up. It was like very realistic to me. Maybe I'm easily fooled by like ocular kind of stuff, but I thought
Yeah.
it was incredible. So like the dinosaur
Yeah.
thing that you're talking about, I also
Yeah.
tried. I think they had like an agreement with Oculus. It was kind of that whole like weird sort of area where like I think Google had Cardboard around this time, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I really found it compelling as like a way to entertain myself with like
Yeah.
short little video clips and stuff like that, like sort of snacking
Yeah.
VR stuff. But I did actually not even mind watching Netflix on my back with like a virtual
Mm-hmm.
projection kind of theater
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. The biggest problem it had was with sensors, trying to like convince it that my eye is looking here and then laying
Yeah.
back and not having everything disappear
Right.
was the biggest issue, because of course when you're on your back, there's no way to bring it back, that kind of
Right.
stuff. I have high hopes that Apple will figure out, because of the sensors involved, like where things are versus where you
Right.
are. And like I think you have to calibrate it basically when you start. Anyway, we're super in the weeds here. I apologize, but
Yeah.
I do feel like some of these scenarios that I thought were compelling are going to be even more so with higher res and better sensors.
Right.
I have hope. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm bearish on most things. Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad they have more time to figure out all the details, but one of
Yes.
those details I'm curious about is, for people that have like a wandering eye where the eye starts to go that way, but they're still looking that way.
Right. Or there's like you have to pay more money if you wear glasses in order to like
Yeah.
have corrective lenses. Like that might
Corrective
be
lenses, yeah.
a problem for some people.
Unless they're not, I mean, maybe that's just included in the cost, one set of
It
those ice
seemed to
corrections.
be, yeah, it seemed to be an extra upgrade, but there were no prices bandied about.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's got a -1 to -3 or something that you can dial in some sort of diopter setting, right?
Yeah.
I thought that's what the digital crown was for, and then found out that it wasn't. So
Mm-hmm.
I was a little bit disappointed there, because that's something in cameras, at least we've had figured out for years, is like that diopter correction
Right.
on the pro
Right.
models at least.
Yeah, I mean, I have diopter. I have a pair of, what are they? Some Nikon binoculars,
Coolpix, maybe.
Monarch or something. And it's got a diopter, and it's good if you're just looking at the center. But as soon as any
Right.
sort of peripheral is like all weird.
Right.
But
Were there any other use cases that you could think of for this? Like traditionally in VR, we're talking about like training for automotive repair and things like that.
Mhm.
None of those business cases came up that I saw, which I thought
Right.
was kind of interesting, purely consumer based. But
Mhm.
again, Apple in enterprise, this is kind of like one of those things that's fraught with difficulty. But I was immediately thinking of enterprise applications for this.
Yeah, I mean, for any sort of rough work, it seems a little too shiny to.
Right.
I mean, it would have to come down a lot. Either be for that $3,500, be super durable,
Right.
or drop down to $1,000 or $2,000, where if you destroy
You can buy
5 out of 5 out of 50, it's no big deal. But yeah,
What are you thinking? Like a zip line, like a VR zip line experience? Just because they're self-contained,
Yeah.
so you could put one
Yeah.
on, hop on a zip line, and hopefully not die.
Right.
or
But I mean,
like
like,
an yeah.
I mean, for use in where you're learning car repair stuff. I mean, maybe you're in the car repair place, or you're and there's oil and grease and stuff, and I can imagine that getting a little mucky.
Yeah, so one of the cases we had at Caterpillar, which is a place
Mm,
I've worked in my past, is engine repair, the Cummins engine, which is pretty complicated. It's
mhm,
large. There's a lot of moving parts, and
yeah.
some of it was just identifying what is where, and then
Mm,
testing you to, like, if they name a part, that you could point at
mhm,
it with some accuracy to say that it's there, kind of thing. I think
mhm,
that may still be in the works, but something like that around
mm,
letting you get familiar with a vehicle that may not be on site, because some of these vehicles are very, very large, like larger than
right,
a building large. So it's
right.
difficult to ship them around the world. And because of that, getting more familiar with them. Another example outside of that industry would be like aerospace or aircraft, or anything
Yep,
like sea vehicles, where it's difficult to get to the location to get
right.
trained. Whereas then you can go on site and do your practicum, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I think those are pretty interesting use cases, but you're right, it does not look rugged. We need like an OtterBox or
No,
something for
no.
the
Yeah.
headset, because is it the Vision Pro? Is that what they
Yeah.
we need, like, the Vision Pro Rugged Edition or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Like, what is the Panasonic kind of
The
version for police
Panasonic
in the car?
Toughbook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What's the tough book equivalent of this that we can, like, sell to, I don't know, law enforcement or something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
What about drones?
Um,
Did your mind wander that far?
no, I'm not, but
FPV,
I don't
DJI?
really
Yeah.
care too much about drone stuff. I could see it for, any place or any environment that is hostile to humans. So, having some sort of experience where there's cameras at the bottom of the ocean, or just
Mhm.
a camera that's already attached to some submarine that's recorded stuff, and watching that. Or, more, I mean, there's some great planetarium apps on the phone,
Right? Yep.
but have that in the display where,
Ah, there we
and
go.
because you've got the
See, we gotta get
cameras,
you a dev kit. Yeah.
because we've got the cameras, now I can be outside and
Yeah, yeah.
actually see the stars and see the constellation, the goofy symbols, but overlay the actual stars rather than, and from a, I guess we have that with the phone, but you're holding up this phone.
What is it
So
called?
that
Is
kind
it
of,
Night Sky? Is that the name of that app?
there's Night Sky. There's a few of them that have that. I
That's what my
probably
brain
even
went to
have one.
immediately, but that's a really good point, right? So we got to get
Yeah.
Matt on this. We got to start selling this SDK, because that's like, unfortunately, I always put my work hat on, right? So like, you've got this
Yeah.
amazing product, you've launched it, it's a platform for apps to build on. You've got to get this in the hands of developers.
So I have Starwalk 2 is the app that I
Firewall?
have.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the question is, like, how do you get this to devs somewhat cheaply, but also
Yeah.
at the same time, like, not release this? Like, it's got to be a
Right.
very difficult line to walk, where it's like actual hardware and you want them to
Yeah.
dev for it, but because it's completely new, it's got it. I'm sure they've got launch partners and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or people that they just float an SDK to and an NDA so they can play around with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, now comes the hard part of like socializing this to devs who you want to get to make apps for, to
Right.
start, because like there's no killer apps. It just launches
Yeah.
with like the
Yeah.
standard suite of Apple apps, which is great, but like I'm not going to be using the equivalent of iWork on this thing.
But
Just
I mean, I could see like a, working on a Final Cut Pro timeline where I'm able to like look
oh,
all the way at
oh,
the
oh,
whole
unlimited
long
timeline.
timeline. Like,
Oh, there we
ah,
go. There we go.
um,
And they just
and
released that, right? That Final Cut version for iOS. So yeah.
mm, hmm
Interesting. Hmm.
or even just, if you're using, you're purely in the terminal, but with Tmux, and just being able to look over to, whichever of the, tabs or whatever windows that you're in, and be able to switch to that, because I mean, you kind of have that with
Oh,
some alternate window managers on the Mac, but they're
great.
always, the mouse is never, it's sometimes where you want it to be and sometimes it's not, and then you got to fight with like Amethyst. And have you ever played around with Amethyst?
I have not, but
um
you're blowing my mind here. I had not thought of terminal uses for this. I guess because I thought
yeah,
like this is a really old thing. It can't work with the new thing. But that's a really good point.
but I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you had this massive screen and a big screen that you are working with in the terminal, and maybe you've got, maybe you also have UI for your test framework,
Oh, this
but
is really
being able
cool.
to, and because you are, where where your eye is looking at, that becomes higher resolution as you look at that, and other
Right.
stuff become lower resolution. Well, maybe you could also augment that to be, um, not only is it higher resolution, but it's also bigger. Like I remember
Oh, it
on
magnifies a
the
bit. Oh.
yeah, I remember on the Pocket PC, when it was a compact, when Compaq made the Pocket
Mhm,
PCs,
mhm.
Microsoft, um, there was a calendar app that used what they called the fisheye UI, fisheye
Interesting.
interface, and basically whatever was at wherever the cursor was, that box that day was big, and all the other ones, as it
Oh,
went further away, got smaller and smaller and smaller, and that way you could see a huge amount of information on one
great.
screen, but really only one. Everything around the periphery was small,
Right,
but what you were focused on was big,
right.
and you could do something like that.
There's a
Like a
term, is it window box? There's a term for this in gaming where, like, they only
mm,
render in high def, like, what you're actually looking at, and maybe a little bit
mm,
around it so you can turn quickly. But yeah,
yeah,
that's it. And I just pulled up Amethyst, so it's a tiling window manager,
mm,
which I
yep,
hadn't even thought of. Like, yeah, let's get rid of
yeah,
the default window
and,
manager in the Vision Pro and like what else
yeah.
is available. Good
So
point.
there's Amethyst, and then also there's Yabai, Yabai.
Very cool. Yabai danger, I think.
Huh?
I think yabai means danger in
Oh,
Japanese.
okay.
Yabai tiling window manager. Very cool. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
made by Koei Keishiya, so this is sounds like a Japanese name. Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's kind of where it is. Like, what if the
Yeah.
default experience is this? What can we add to it to make it better?
Right.
Because I get it. Contacts might be neat in VR, or maybe iMessage or Messages
Hmm.
app or FaceTime or what have you might be cool.
Hmm.
There's a bunch of this stuff. Like, what does it mean for if I can see my files in VR? What does that mean
Hmm.
for my files?
Right.
How can is there a really cool way that I can merge these back? Or like, what does Time
Right.
Machine look like? Is kind of what I was thinking about. Like the
Right.
actual Time Machine kind of thing is sort of VR. It's not at all, but I can sort of see it like
Right.
translating into VR as a way that I can like, oh, I want to like pick this point in time
Right.
and like grab it kind of thing. Very neat.
Now, of course, I guess one of the other technology areas that's going to be big because it often helps lead technology
Oh, here
into
we go.
new directions.
I was not gonna mention this.
I
Are we
mean,
talking about,
porn.
DVD versus,
Well, I
HD
mean,
video
there's
again?
like uh,
VHS versus
the
beta?
the porn industry often takes new technology, and takes it in new directions.
No,
And
I'm no
I
expert, but my understanding is there's already a Vancouver developer who's in this industry
oh,
making
really?
bank. So I can only assume that in LA, this is already happening, or
Right.
Miami, or whatever the pockets of this industry is involved in. But yeah, okay, good point.
Yeah.
So if they're already embracing it, then the question is, does this make it mainstream? And because of that, does it make it better?
Hmm.
The other thing I was thinking about is AI, which kind of dovetails into the subject, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And where generative, like if you could make your own story with video, we're not
Hmm.
there yet. We're getting close to AI generated
Yeah.
video. We've already got AI generated 3D models and
Yeah.
texture mapping on models in 3D. So the question is like, could I create my own VR game with some prompts?
Yeah.
Could I create content for myself? And again, I still have this SDK kind of developer story stuck in my craw. Like,
Right.
what does that mean as like a citizen developer? Can I? Because I'm still annoyed the fact that I can't make my own Apple Watch face because I've got
Hmm.
ideas. You can't make one. There's no way to make a
Right.
watch face unless you're Hermes. I think are the only
Yeah.
people who have custom watch faces. I want to be able to make my own custom VR
Mm.
experience. I'm not sure this is
Hmm.
it. However, if it's if it makes other people develop VR headsets that allow me to
Hmm.
do it, like an Android version that's better, I'm here for it.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that would be amazing because I do want to control that experience a little bit. I would hate to have the equivalent of a Samsung pop-up ad in a VR experience. It
Hmm.
was really bad with Oculus once Facebook took over and they want you to like sign into this like shared thing. And that's kind of where I just got off the train because it
Yep.
was not for me. I get that they thought it was going to be very easy to have one login for everything. It it was not cool to already be logged into something and then
Hmm.
log in VR is like it's a
Mm.
no-go. You do
Yeah.
not want to be playing around with the virtual keyboard trying to type in a password in VR.
Yeah.
Like this, it full stop. Like it's
Yeah.
awful, awful. You're already logged in. We need you to log
Yeah.
in again, even though it's the same login ID.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you have to jump through this hoop and maybe another to link the account.
Yeah.
And I get it. It could have been a one-time only experience.
Right.
It was terrible, very, very awful. And
Yeah.
I get that. It sounds like I'm like making this a really big deal, but there's a huge market segment as computer users are getting older that are really just not going to make this jump. They will not.
Right.
When you change your login, ways of logging in, you change your login session. Having seen this as SmartThings, like it's actually a very difficult problem to solve. And I
Mhm.
really hope Apple doesn't go down this path where like only first party apps allow you to sort of like get this whole eye unlock experience, because it took a while
Mhm.
to get Face ID to work properly, and like
Right.
what's the other one, the fingerprint kind of unlock. Like it
Yep.
took a while for that ecosystem to catch up. I
Yep.
really do not want to see all the new developers developing in this SDK without that logon capability. It would be a big mess, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, rant. I'll put my soapbox
Yeah.
away for a bit.
But I mean, there were also some other things that were introduced. I like the what they're calling it, name drop, for being
didn't
able
see that.
to touch for a phone on iOS, being
Okay.
able to bring two phones together and have the contact information transfer over just by proximity.
That's huge.
I think that's great. And for me to be, if you have my phone number, I can control the poster that shows up on your phone
That's pretty cool.
for me. So I can have whatever I think is a positive way of displaying who I am. Now you get that view as well. I think that's really cool.
And for men, I think the default is like a picture from 10 years ago, right? This is how we operate. Maybe 20.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got our one viewer has joined in and said good morning.
Oh, hey, wow. It only took 51 minutes.
We've been ranting about the Apple release that I missed while I was away. Yeah, that is a pretty cool feature, actually. That's one of those things that Android, I think, had with NFC back in the
I think
Nexus days, but
right.
Was it Nexus? Whatever the early versions of I think it was Google Nexus, right? Yeah, Nexus phones.
Yeah.
What else did I miss? Sorry, those are the only announcements that I cared about were the Vision Pro, the Studio,
there's
and
the widgets on iPad and on iOS are going to be, like actually interactive rather than just basically a big button that opens up the app.
That's
and then the new journal app, which should be good, and basically alternative to Day One or other kind of journaling apps. That looked pretty interesting.
Pretty extensively now.
Yeah. Widgets coming back to the desktop on Mac OS.
Day One looks pretty cool. Okay, grab that link too.
Oh, Day One. It's interesting that that's still going. I used to use it, and then they were an early. I think they were an early one that switched to a subscription model, and then I think that might have been the first of the subscription models for me. And it's like, okay, I'm gone.
Yeah, Moleskine kind of went that way, and honestly, I still like it. So I pay, but like, it is a bit of a hurdle. This is another one of those ways to lose users, is to move from like lifetime license to subscription. IA Writer was another one where I paid lifetime, and then they moved to a different model, and they lost me in there.
I did find it was very interesting that in the last time we had this call, you talked, or last time or the time before, you talked about Death Stranding, and it had a part in the keynote.
It's pretty. They're working on a new game. I may have heard something about the game that I don't know if it's public or not, but the studio is working on a new game. Pretty cool. I'm very hype on it. I think whenever Kojima touches something, it becomes at least a little bit. It's gonna be novel in some way. I would love to see if the new game has any VR stuff in it, because that would be amazing. But yes, I did hear Death Stranding was in the notes, which is cool. What'd you think?
It looks great. I mean, that's the first time I'd really seen. I mean, you mentioned it, and I saw like a little trailer, but it wasn't really sure what you see in the game.
Right.
And so then seeing it as part of that, it's like, oh, okay, I'd like to play this.
Yes, even it's one of those games where you might get sidetracked by all the like side quests and stuff like that. Just in terms
Mm,
of I say world building here. It's a bit tongue in cheek because you're rebuilding the world.
hmm
I got sucked up in that. In the main game, I think I
Yeah.
finally finished like a year and a half later. But it is very very unique to me, and I'd love to see more games of this ilk come out. And I love it when Apple, I don't know, focuses on a developer that people might not have like really paid attention to. I think the other one was it Monument Valley that they had talked about years
Mm,
ago, which is one of those pretty cool puzzle games that people might have skipped over and not seen. I think Threes was another one where it's just a simple puzzle game, but also
yep.
very cool. Yeah.
Yep. Um, so we're an hour in, and we're
Ooh, sorry. Well, whenever we talk about Apple, this happens.
yeah. You had actually sent me hey, do you want to talk about this survey?
That would take like half an hour, I think.
That
At
would
least
take
for me.
another,
I
yeah.
don't know about you, but yeah, I could easily talk about this a lot. So the
Yeah.
key findings I had for this is that like it looks like people are relying on books less and less to get developer knowledge. And I kind of feel seen because I definitely used to get all my dev knowledge from books. That was a key
Yeah.
takeaway for me. If I were to take one thing from there, it's not called out at all. I think books are still like second in the list of ways of learning about
hmm
new programming language and stuff like that. But for me, as like a Safari books user, like, yeah, sorry, I'm
hmm
really not in the print book area either. And I feel like O'Reilly was a titan of this industry, and they've
Right.
kind of pulled back a bit in terms of printed materials as well. And I feel
Yeah.
like that could be why, but
Yeah.
maybe that's a different conversation for a different day.
Yeah. I mean, I used to use Safari books a lot. I mean, mostly because Datadog paid for my subscription for 5 years.
Makes sense.
And then they stopped when we switched over to using
Udemy,
was it Udemy Business? I
right?
was, no, you cannot have that as well.
They're
We are
similar.
not paying for
They're,
that.
they're not the
Yes.
same. Yeah.
No.
And less people talking about like ACM, but no mention
Yeah.
of ACM in here at all, which honestly I feel like in terms of learning from computing history is where you
Mm-hmm.
should be in terms of finding community
Yep.
and learning from your people who have gone down this path before, and maybe
Yeah.
having some sort of like apprenticeship and stuff like that. Like that's
Right.
all lost on the newer generation of programmers who seem to be relying more and more on AI to help teach them coding
Mm-hmm.
practices.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not throwing shade at all, but it does appear like newer programmers are using more AI than
Yeah.
older programmers, which is
Right.
fine, but it's also maybe more of an indicator to me.
I was just listening to a podcast about one of the talking about developers and AI tools, and it was do you ever listen to Syntax?
No,
Wes Boss and Scott Tolinsky.
no.
Um, so they the one I was listening to this morning had two guys from GitHub Next.
Very cool.
So talking about some of their basically talking about Copilot and some of the other tools that they've been working on and the role of AI in a developer's workflow. That's pretty. It was a neat episode. Actually, one of the things I haven't had a chance to look at much into, or I played around with the site briefly. Recursive.design. Take a look
Mm.
at this. Recursive.design is the website. It's a font.
Nope.
What?
I get it.
What?
I do not like this font.
Well, scroll down and play around with the sliders.
Yeah.
Because this is what's amazing is that and then so you basically create whatever font you like, and it's pretty amazing.
Is it? Good idea. Yeah. Good idea. Cool implementation. The Yeah, the premise is actually a really good idea. I just actively dislike every version of this font. I'm so sorry. This is
Mm.
like a programmer designing a font. Oh, it's from Google Fonts. Yes.
Is it?
Okay. Yeah, Aerotype with friends of Google Fonts.
Okay.
Um, this is a good idea. They lost me at the R, like straight up. It just does not look good
At
in
the
any
R?
version. Yeah, in any version of this that they've got, does not work for me. It
What about the R?
The way the curve comes out of the R itself is like it's maybe, I think it's because it's in the RW that I see it right away. But yeah, this is
Hmm.
it's all right. So I think people who like a newspaper font, this is perfect for. Yeah. Okay.
Well, the R depends on the how much you play around with the um
The problem has more to do with the curve than it does like
right.
the thickness or like the serif. I think
Hmm.
more than anything else, it's actually the curve. It's a really cool idea. It starts up too high, basically on the font, even when it's in Sans. It's like it's way too high on the R. It should be further down, and because of that, it looks a little bit angular. And because it looks angular, it looks like a different font, and it doesn't really mix with the W. Listen.
W.
Yeah, the RW example that's under their default size when you scroll down.
Oh, okay.
Man, I could talk about these fonts for a while. I think for graphics and for logos, this makes a ton of sense. So you can play
Yeah.
around and see like how playful you want your logo to be,
Right.
especially when you talk about italicization and stuff like that. It's great. Or even a little bit into the sort of hand drawn looks that they've got going on. But yeah,
Hmm.
the root of this font I have issues with, unfortunately. But it is a really cool idea. It does look
Okay.
readable. The other thing is there's no ligatures that I can see. Maybe I'm missing ligatures. And I get that like a lot of people don't like ligatures. So when the two fonts, like two characters,
Right.
would sort
Yep.
of stick together.
Yep.
There are some. Okay. Uh,
I don't understand how you set the things, but in if you were to use this in say VS Code, but
right. So it looks like on the top right, you can hit get and then you can download. And after you hit download, you sort of
there
pick.
you're choosing what you want. Okay.
Yeah, and if you're loading it in like a website, you deep link to the one that's got all the
Right.
properties sort of baked in,
Right.
which is also pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super close to like being amazing. It's just slightly off from me. I'm so sorry. Have you ever tried to make your own font? Like this is one of those
Yeah.
things. Like yeah, it's
No, it's
really
terrible.
difficult. I used to use Macromedia Fontographer quite a bit.
Yeah.
And this is one of my dreams, is like to be able to make my own font. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've
We'll
got
get to be like 90% of the way there. That's awesome.
I've done it like with an iPad app where you're
Right.
you know turning your writing into a font,
Right.
and
then you do a bunch of samples
and then you look at the results and it's like, this is awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
There's more to fonts than just drawing some letters.
Yes, absolutely. And they do talk about it a bit, but there's a difference between languages as well, like how fonts will display. So like in
Yeah.
Spanish, just as an example, like the upside down question mark or upside down
Right.
exclamation point aren't just flipped. They're a little bit different. But there's a lot to think about. Japanese is another great example where you're not just mapping strokes, you're mapping characters as
Right.
images, and those images need to have like a certain weight, and the weight's very
Right.
important because it will like display differently. But yeah, this is a pretty cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Japanese is not in this list. And then is Chinese or Mandarin? No. Yeah, this is a hard problem to solve. This
Yeah.
is one of those things where like a combination of this AI and human in the loop training would
Yeah.
actually get you a little bit further in terms of like what's actually legible, but you'd need some sort of like mechanical Turk to be reading your stuff and grading the output to tell
Right.
you where you are. But this is a really cool framework. I shouldn't discount it. Like I can understand there's a lot of effort put into this. Just for me though, as somebody who like really appreciates
Yeah.
fonts, I feel like this is extremely ugly. It's like an active eyesore. This is like,
Wow.
there's good like hand drawn fonts for like signage outside of stores, and you're like, wow, that's really
Right.
cool and retro. And then you're like, wow, that guy must have been drunk when he did this. It's more on the drunk side. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, we're getting there. This is neat. Like the light normal actually is a better R than the sans normal, which is another problem. So it's like they've
Oh,
got
I haven't played attention. Oh, I didn't see
yeah,
these
yeah, like this table, for
presets.
example. Yeah, it's super close. Like it's super close. But somebody from a font house needs to come in and just like hit them with a stick or something. Like, a lot of your assumptions here are incorrect. It's kind of like training training a model when the trainer has like an assumption and the assumption's
Right.
incorrect. I feel like, yeah, maybe some of these assumptions are incorrect, and I might get called out publicly. Like my understanding of fonts could be incorrect as well, but to me, this actively doesn't look like something I'd use for
Right.
logos. For coding, though, it might actually be very handy because it does look readable, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah, finding a readable monospace font is difficult for sure.
Do you have a favorite?
If I told you Ubuntu Mono, would you laugh at me after somebody who had just gone through this whole rant? Because it's kind of universally hated. It was like a basic
Yeah.
font. Helvetica New is absolutely
Hmm.
my favorite, and I know that
Mm.
that's kind of like that's sort of like a basic answer, but I
Right.
really do like it, and I really like the ultralight Helvetica New is probably my favorite,
Mm.
and that it
Hmm.
can work in a
Hmm.
lot of spaces.
Right.
But I also really like Impact, which is what the US used to use for road signage. I find it
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay.
incredibly legible. And then
Yeah.
some of the handwritten fonts in like the New York subway, I think are actually
Mm.
really cool. Some of the tile fonts as well are really nice.
Hmm.
Um, and then I'm trying to think of my favorite font house, but like Linotype would probably be my favorite in terms of like
Mm.
actual quality. It used to be included as part of like Adobe
Right.
Master Suite, I think it was in. But yeah, those fonts are incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to find a bad one. A lot of like the copper plates, like
Yeah.
Gotham, are all going to be there. Yeah, Times is actually pretty good. Like in Windows, the Times font is
Yeah.
pretty good. A lot of my font opinions are kind of basic. Sorry. But they're basic for a reason. The ones that are out
Yeah.
there are being used all the time, I think, breed like a familiarity with them. There's
Hmm.
also like that Japanese video game font, which is as lauded in Japan and in Asia as being like a good font to use for
Mm.
foreign script, but I really dislike it. The spacing is often odd.
Right.
And some of our signage here, in fact, was designed with this font, so the spaces between the letters is uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Like a little bit too far apart, and we'll have street signs in this font, and it's like this is actively not legible because there's too much space between the
Yeah.
letters. There needs to be a period here or something like that. But you can tell the difference between our lineage, or sorry, the like how old something is in terms of the street
Right.
sign in
Right.
Vancouver, because the new font is terrible. But
Mm.
the old font is actually quite nice, but it's pretty smushed together. The old ones. Some
Yeah.
of our street names are pretty long, and it's kind of smushed. And then the newer ones just have way too much. I think it's leading between the characters, or
Hmm.
maybe it's kerning. The kerning is too much. Yeah. Anyway,
Mm.
fonts. I have opinions, possibly ill-founded. Sorry, we went over there. Yes,
Yeah.
font rant. Now you know.
I'm actually as you're talking, I'm going through. Wait, I must have a different survey than what you.
I,
What was
I
this?
w- I was reading between the lines. Also, those are my
Okay.
conclusions as opposed to the findings
Right.
of the survey. Yeah, but like Rust being the most admired language that people want to learn, I think is possibly another problem.
Yeah.
This is the first language you want to learn. Also, there are other ones in there like Zig I had never heard of that I had to do some
Hmm.
research on. There's a framework for Elixir called Phoenix that I wasn't familiar with that was
Mm.
pretty popular. Which, again, surprise to me. I'm
Right.
not too grounded in the Erlang Clojure Elixir community, but I found some of those things pretty interesting. And Docker capital DTM was mentioned 3 times in the
Hmm.
findings. Not
Hmm.
containers, not LXC, LXD, none of that.
Hmm.
Container D, Docker, capital
Oh,
D.
okay. Interesting.
And I think it's actually lowercase d Docker, which is also
Right.
another. Like you meant to say containers, you said Docker.
Right. Right.
Is it lowercase or is it uppercase? It seemed to be, in my memory, it was lowercase. No, it's all uppercase.
Right.
Yeah, uppercase Docker, no TM. So it's just This is like, is it the Mirantis Docker? Is it the is it Docker? We don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like Swarm isn't in here. I don't know. Kubernetes wasn't in there. Did you see Kubernetes at all? I did not.
No.
Yeah, which is a little bit odd to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could talk about that one for a while though.
Yeah. We should definitely talk about it another time.
Let's do it.
And maybe I should get the link because I'm obviously looking at the wrong place.
Oh, really? I think the one I sent you is good. It should have the findings at the top, and then as you scroll down, it will drill into each section.
I am on. So what you sent me is on that machine.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
I'm on this machine.
Gotcha.
And I don't have my email and Slack set up on here.
Perfect. I'll throw it in the show notes as well, or send it your way to throw it in the show notes. But
yeah,
I think the main thing is, like, just in terms of this survey that I really liked is the fact that it's really easy to read this year, similar to last year, but not the same. The conclusions are on little cards, which I thought was great, so I could read them and then click into to like drill down into each one. This is kind of like the way I'd like to see a report when it comes down to like BI. This is a good way to surface some of this stuff. A lot of questions about methodology, questions again, capital D Docker. There's a few things in here, like there's a weight on AI that is probably warranted, but maybe not being used in other areas, which I thought was interesting. So it's kind of like, yeah, lots of questions. Always more questions than answers for these survey results.
Yeah. Cool.
Did you have any checkouts that we should know?
Oh,
aside from the 7 links here that I've got open. Aside from the 7 links that I've got open through just natural conversation here.
So did I talk about this before?
You did.
I did. Okay.
Are you actually using it though? Because last time
I am. It's great.
Okay.
For a lot of Final Cut editing. It's been great. Really cool. 2 other things I got pretty recently. Is there only 2? There's actually a whole. I got a something to help organize the garage. I can't show it, but Wall Control is the name of the company.
Talked about that
and,
one. But you got it. Yeah, we definitely did mention it last time. Okay, you got it.
Oh, okay. So I've set it up and started paying things onto it, and it's pretty amazing.
Do you feel at peace when you like organize things to a certain extent?
I think I will.
Okay, not there yet.
it isn't all set up yet.
Okay.
It is.
It sounds like therapy, though.
Yeah. I mean, it will be nice to have everything organized. Tony is also excited about knowing where things go. So when she puts things, returns things to the garage, it's not just return things to a random box, but rather to a specific spot. So, and then I got 2 tools recently that I'm very excited about. These tools have names.
All right.
I don't know what they are.
You know how to use them? This is the key point.
The first one is from, I think it's from Klein Tools. Yeah, Klein Tools. Okay. It's a it looks like a normal kind of wrench, but it's
the cutter.
That's pretty cool. But then that adjusts. So that's pretty cool. But then what's really neat is this comes out to the end, and then this piece comes off, which is hard to do on
hard to do on
so this comes off, and now I can slide this back in.
For those just listening, Matt is holding a yellow tool and moving around this black implement.
And now,
look at that! It's like a little claw.
Yeah, it's changed a bit. So they swaps around. So that I thought that was pretty cool, and that's actually come in pretty useful already. But then for traveling, I keep hearing about these.
What is that?
Knipex. They're a company called Knipex.
Okay.
But it's just a similar idea.
I've heard of
So
Knoppix before. Is this a Linux distro on CD?
yeah. So this is it's a similar, we're adjustable, but it is tiny.
Is
So
it the
this is like
Cobra?
4 inches long.
Oh,
Um
5 inches long, I think. Looking at the
4
specs
inches
here.
long.
Oh, this is the tiny version. Okay,
This is the small,
the
I think.
small. So they're called Cobra pliers. Is this right?
Cobra pliers, that's it.
Ah, my
Yep.
Google flu is pretty good. All right.
So this is and it's super lightweight. So I'm gonna throw this in my bag, and because sometimes it has been, I wish I had a wrench for a
Yes.
few things sometimes. And so this is nice and small, and
Yeah,
I'm
pliers
looking
are
forward to it.
amazing. For
Yeah.
those of you listening who maybe just starting your home repair kind of thing, pliers are super handy.
Now, will I use this for home repair? No, but when on the road, it would be nice to have. And now one thing that's weird about this is I think this is a German company.
Right?
And it arrived
It is. Yeah.
within about 3 or 4 days. It did not get shipped from the US. Instead, it got shipped from Australia.
That doesn't. None of this tracks. None of this makes sense.
I have no idea why it got shipped from Australia.
I've been on these flights. It sounds expensive.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, but it was like, I don't know, it was this normal Amazon free shipping.
Okay. Yeah, because
Well,
you'd assume that it's in like a depot, right? Or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Very, very.
They
That's
they shipped 5,000 to Amazon somewhere.
right.
But no, this
Kansas,
came from
generally,
Australia.
right? Very,
Yeah.
very interesting.
No, so yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was Nipex, so I'm glad to learn that it's Nipex. I've seen these before.
I mean, maybe it's Snipex.
No, if it's German, it's got to be Nipex. I think you're right.
Okay.
Very cool.
So yeah. So those are my 2 new tools.
That is awesome.
This has been super useful though. This
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, one of the things I used it for actually this morning, I had to get a whole bunch of the, those big like industrial staples out of a box, so I
Yeah,
didn't slice my arm. It was great.
make quick work of it.
There's many other things I could have used, but this was what I used. It was amazing.
I hear you.
And yeah, that's what you? Yeah, anything new and cool?
The biggest thing I missed while being offline of the internet was playing Street Fighter 6, which I'm addicted to, unfortunately. And I'm trying to write a talk about it because I feel like whenever I invest too much time into something, there should be some output other than just my enjoyment, which maybe is not a mature approach to it. But I'm very interested in what helps you learn how to play a game better and enjoy yourself in relation to, because of course, DevOps. So like, what does the DevOps dojo mean if like Street Fighter has a training program?
Right.
And what is the game theory around personal motivation, so incentives to get better versus team incentives to get better as a team? And I don't have a conclusion, but I've been thinking about this a lot. Street Fighter has a lot of like risk reward kind of systems
Right.
in it, which I think actually have real world application. I also maybe just like the alliteration of DevOps Dojo, but I realize that's also not like the best name for it. But if I were to run a team through a bunch of like game day kind of scenarios to get them better at something, what would be the framework that allows them to pick an area of expertise to get better at, or maybe to find something new? And what are those areas? What does that spider graph look like? For the same as like a Street Fighter, you've got like character speed and stuff like that, and strengths on the team, that kind of thing. So maybe I'm thinking about this more as like a video game. So if I'm in the game dev tycoon world, what would the practice for those NPC characters who I'm telling to make new games or whatever? What does that look like? So yeah, just got that rumbling around in my head. I use games as ways to describe things a lot.
Yeah.
But this kind of seems to resonate with me right now.
Wow. Well, thinking of games, I went to a friend had their like game night that they do every couple of months, and so I went to one, and it was fantastic.
Nice.
There was me and basically 4 of his friends, one of whom I already know. And there's one is this is Bainbridge Island, but one of them is astrophysics professor or some other some physics professor out of Tennessee. But So him and an SRE at Apple and an SRE at Starbucks, and so interesting people. But we played these games that one was Micro Macro Crime City.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Oh, so amazing. So it has this map, hand-drawn map that is like 4 foot by 5 foot that you lay out on a table. And it's got and then there's 18 sets of cards, and each card is a crime, and you are trying to solve this crime, and you solve it by reading the front of the card. And it says there was a crime in Neptune City. Okay, now you got to look on the map for Neptune City,
Right.
and then okay, find the crime, and you see this dead person on the ground. Okay, now what led up to that event? And so this map has all 18 crimes, but also all stages in the past and future that help you solve the crime.
This is really cool.
And it is amazing.
Yeah, I spotted a crime already in this handwriting thing, and then working backwards, I can see how this kind of works.
It is really, really cool. We played that. We played I think it was called Citadels, or I think it was Citadels. It was a kind of a card game where on each round you take a different role, whether it's the king or a merchant or a thief or an assassin or a bishop, and then depending on your role for that round, and you have some choice, but it's based off of what's the next card that's turned over, and then you're trying to build your city that has 8 pavilions or cities or areas. But at each round, other people that you're playing with could either destroy your building or take your building, or take your money, and so you never know what's going to happen. And the person who finishes first doesn't necessarily win because it's based on the points. Like I finished first, but I didn't win.
Gotcha.
And because you get enough points you get extra points for being first, but there's other ways you can get points, and I didn't have those. So that was really, really cool. And then we played one other one, which was called the Chameleon.
Okay.
And each person gets a card. For each round, you get one card that has a grid of numbers on it. And the grid of numbers corresponds to these 2 dice that you roll. One's an 8-sided die, I think, and one's a 6-sided die. You roll that, and then you see, okay, look for that coordinate, and then it has another set of another grid. So C3. And so at the same time, a card was flipped over that had a topic area. And on that topic card are 16 or so different things. It could be like movies, and there was Princess Bride and Star Wars and all these other movies. And now everybody, including the Chameleon, everybody needs to think of a word that sort of describes which topic was actually chosen, which movie was actually chosen. And so one of them was the Princess Bride. But everybody who knows what it is can come up with a good word, but the person who doesn't know what it is needs to figure out what it is, or say a word that is vague enough that it could still be. And then you go through that one round, and then it's up to everybody to work together to figure out who is the Chameleon. And of course, the Chameleon is in with you, and so it's trying to steer you away from him. With them, yeah. It was a bunch of guys, so it was
yeah.
But yeah. So now the time that we did where it was Princess Bride was the one that we had actually been selected. The Chameleon said space. Because a lot of the movies were space related. It's like, you're obviously the Chameleon. But another one was anniversaries. And so it had like paper and diamond and all the like anniversary gifts. And I was the Chameleon. and I had to go first. It was because it was my turn to go first. It's like, well, I don't know what it is, so let me just. So I saw a bunch of things on a card that were soft, and so I said soft, and it goes around, and it turns out what was chosen was tin. And so everybody thought, oh well, tin's a soft metal, so he's obviously not the chameleon.
Because you're talking to smart people, physicists and stuff.
Yeah, and I was the chameleon, and I tricked everyone. So it's a really, really cool game.
I like that. I like those kind of like sort of social games, like Among Us or whatever.
Yeah,
Werewolf, what have you. That's really cool.
So those were the 3 games we played. It was really fun.
Awesome. All right, we should look at more board games. This is really neat.
Yes.
Oh shit, we're way over time now.
We are now.
we turn this into a regular Zoom call.
Yeah.
This was awesome. Again, sorry for missing last week. Obviously, we made up for it this week. Hopefully, our one listener enjoyed it.
They joined in for it was like
half an hour.
Not long.
Yeah.
Was it half hour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Gave them half an hour of content.
Yes.
All right, sir. Should we find the end stream button?
I think so. End broadcast.
Let's
I'm going to find it right about now.